there are enough white guys talking words at cameras right now, and maybe another one is not what we need. Welcome back to the Book Report. I'm here, I did it, I pressed record, and I did the thing that I never wanted to do on this channel, which was invite you into my office space. And that may seem not nice. Sorry. It's going to take me a minute. This is going to take me a minute, because see, the thing about it is that this is super cringy. Talking to a camera in a social media kind of way is very cringy, and I don't enjoy it in the way that I think some people do. I thought that if I made enough videos over the course of a few years, that this feeling would go away, that I would stop feeling insecure talking to a camera, and I would vanquish all of those scary, cringy feelings. But I don't think it's ever going to go away, and I think that if I want to communicate like this, that I just have to accept it for what it is, and that's okay. I am no stranger to cringe. I just want to start by saying that there have been some really nice people that have reached out to me over the last year and encouraged me to make more videos, and maybe I've lost them as subscribers at this point. I don't know. We'll talk about subscribers later, because subscribers are scary. But whatever the case is, insofar as the people who are hanging on and have been kind enough to reach out and say, hey, I'm looking forward to whenever you feel like making a video again, I really appreciate that. It's nice to know that somebody got something out of my, post-COVID rambling, because that's kind of what everything feels like now. I've never really been a person that was active in social media. I feel very uncomfortable with it, and both iterations of YouTube that I sort of play around with as a hobby, my woodworking channel and this channel, I've never taken too seriously, and maybe that maybe it's something I should have taken more seriously. I don't know, but I want to just thank everybody who sent a nice message and just said, hey, looking forward to more of that whenever you feel like it. And to the other people out there who are less encouraging, well, I don't know what to say. I don't want to sit here and make excuses, but I do have a list. I have lists of things that we need to talk about. And at the top of the list is sort of explaining myself. And we're a family that moves pretty regularly, and my wife has a very specific kind of job, and as millennials do, we collect graduate degrees, and so she's been deeply involved in that world, and we run a household, and all of those things that sort of eat up the top of the to-do list, and then everything that sort of falls past that is lagniappe. So if I've got time to make videos, then that's great. Making videos is not something that I ever intended to do for monetization, like directly through YouTube or anything like that. So I've never really pursued, gaining and keeping subscribers. This has always been sort of a way for me to sort of exercise my need to remain social on some level, because if I'm being honest, I'm a little bit of a shut-in, and I venture out into the world as necessary, and I sort of take care of business out there in a healthy, moderated way. But as far as being a guy that is actively social in his own life or outside of the house, that's a no bueno. That's a not me. So I do think it is important to recognize our digital spaces and our digital communities and the value that they bring to us personally, and to cultivate those places, to fill up the sort of dark cyberpunk isolation that we all exist in at this moment. Furthermore, there's the common refrain that we hear from people today, which is, go touch grass. Go touch grass, motherfucker. Like, go outside. And at the beginning of 2025, when it was very apparent that we were going to barrel head first into an even bleaker dystopia than we already lived in, I felt the need to push back generally on the internet. And I hope that everyone has sort of taken an opportunity to consider the amount of time that they spend looking at the news and reading bot commentary, and sort of bifurcating real life with this sort of made-up digital world, and understanding. I hope that we all have found a way to understand what is clear and apparent in our real daily lives versus what the little Black Mirror is telling us about the world. And as an absolutely incurable doomer, it is frightening. It's frightening. It's frightening. And I'm not even going to beat around the bush about that. It's frightening what's happening to the world. It's frightening that just making a video like this and then putting it onto YouTube will inevitably be used to train large language models. That's frightening to me. Recently, Adam Savage did a Q&A video, and he was talking about trauma, and he was talking about the things that would lead a person to change their mind. And he had mentioned that Ram Dass had said at some point that the only thing that can make a person change their mind is despair. And that really hit. And I think that that might be worth consideration. So without going too far deep into the weeds right off the bat, I'll try to pull it back center here. I say all that to welcome you back to this channel. And to remind you that I am a rambling mess, and that's what you're going to get from this channel. And I actually have one of the things here on my list is what do I want from this channel? What is my intention with this channel? And I'll tell you, just to say it out loud, because sometimes speaking your intentions out loud goes a long way to setting expectations both for yourself and for anybody that may be interested. And the fact is that I never wanted to do a purely book review sort of channel. I've never liked doing book reviews. I like analyzing books. I always liked literary analysis when I was getting an English degree, and I was really obsessed with doing forthright analysis, but I never thought of it as sort of criticism in a good, bad sort of way. I generally do not enjoy that kind of criticism, although I appreciate people's opinions. And I, especially if I see somebody that I trust them in other ways, and they have, generally positive reputation for me in all of these other ways, then I will of course covet their opinion and take heed of what they have to say. But generally, listening to somebody say, book good, book bad, it's not something that I've ever been good at, and it's not something that that I want to continue to pursue in that way. I don't like it, and I don't like the idea of top 10 or 25 lists. And again, I don't disparage anybody who wants to make that kind of content. I enjoy watching it. I don't enjoy making it. And there are so many things that I think about when I'm reading a book or I'm experiencing a book that go so much further beyond, is it good? Is it bad? Did they execute this well? Is this, whatever. And I just don't, I don't want to do that. And I'm not saying I won't review books from time to time, but it's definitely not something that motivates me to make a video anymore. And especially recognizing the sort of battle rhythm in reading that is different amongst all of the people. And I can tell you that this year in particular, in 2025, as I've been trying to look away from the black hole, I have found it very difficult to let my eyes focus on words of fiction. And there seems like a feeling that is evoked when I try to read something for pleasure, which is, it seems too trivial to put your attention on. And I feel as though I should be doing something more monetarily productive given the dystopic nature of our time. And so I have by and large avoided reading this year, although I have a list of things that I have read. And I have focused primarily on book selling. And I have focused on becoming a more and more professional bookseller, because in the list of things that I have been monetarily successful at in my life, book selling is the one thing. It is the one thing. I have never made more than minimum wage as a human being, and I have degrees and all of the above. I've never made more than minimum wage. I'm a 40-plus-year-old millennial, and I have never made more than $12 an hour. Even in book selling, if you were to really extrapolate the hours spent, finding the books and preparing the books and photographing the books and listing the books and shipping the books, making far, far less than minimum wage doing it. But my joy is very high, and my feelings of success in that venture are very high. And so I am encouraged to continue to do that because it feels like something that I am good at doing. And I do want to say I have a few specific and critical things to say about book selling and other booksellers, but I'd like to save that for later, and I'm not going to harp on it too deeply, but I do sort of intend at some point in this video to jump in on some issues that the Library Ladder has recently raised about other booksellers in the market, and I would like to issue some warnings to you as book buyers, but bear with me. So I started 2025 with a furniture commission, and I had a friend of mine in Minnesota ask me to build a set of Monticello bookcases, and these are bookcases that were envisioned by Thomas Jefferson as a way for him to easily relocate his books and move them around. And so essentially the bookcases are comprised of individual stacking cases that sit further and further back as they go up. And these cases could, have a lid hammered onto them, and they could just be moved easily. And of course, it wasn't really necessary for Jefferson to do that. After he'd gotten to Monticello and, kicked in, he didn't really move again that much. But that's neither here nor there. But a friend of mine had commissioned me to make these, and so I spent the bulk of my energy at the beginning of the year building these bookcases. And it was a journey of, about 3 months from, the inception to delivery. And it required driving across the United States with a trailer full of them and installing them in his home. And it was a very pleasurable experience. I had a great time doing it. And I made a video about it. And, as is the case with a lot of my furniture videos and that sort of thing, I didn't really narrate it. I didn't really tell the story, and because sometimes those stories feel weird and personal, and I just don't narrate things as I probably should. So I put that video out. I think I put it on both of the channels, or maybe just one. I don't remember. But suffice to say, it was a huge project, and it ate up nearly the entire first quarter of the year. And interspersed with that were a couple of extremely magical book hauls. And if there's anything that is more demotivating to making a YouTube video, it is making a very complicated and drawn out YouTube video about something very specific, and then finding that absolutely none of the audio worked, and that you have literally just wasted hours and hours of your time because you were too foolish with your hardware. And even now, I have my audio just sort of stapled together here, and I'm sure that it will sound very shitty, but sort of, as I was saying earlier, we move often, and when we moved into this house, I didn't have the same sort of space set up that I had in the other house, where I'd sort of had a dedicated area to make videos, and it's taken a lot of time. It takes a lot of time whenever you move into a new house to get settled and to find all your shit. And one of the things that I was plagued with when getting here is like finding all of my equipment and making it all work the way that I had it set up in the other house, and not being stupid enough to film a 3-hour book haul video with zero fucking audio. So suffice to say, and I'm sure I'll splice in some of this footage that I have here, but I made a couple of really incredible book hauls. One of them was a collection of UFO and occult books that belonged to a ufologist in New Jersey named Tom Benson. And it wasn't just Benson's collection. It was also the collection of another ufologist named Jim Moseley. And Moseley had given his entire library to Benson right before his death. And unfortunately, Benson followed him in death a few years later. And his family, almost 10 years after Benson's death, reached out to me just out of the blue and said, hey, we've got all of these books and we're looking for a buyer. And at the time, it was a little more than I could bite off volume-wise. And so I got in touch with another bookseller friend of mine, Carpetbagger Books, and we essentially split the lot up. We bought it together, and we went and removed it from the house and went our separate ways with it. And that collection of books was an incredible joy to go through. And one of the problems with making YouTube content as you're filtering through a huge inventory of books and building furniture for other people is that you really run low on the space that you need to do it, and not to mention the time. So when you end up with several thousand books in your house, and every one of them is worth showing off on the internet, is worth showing somebody and saying, look at this, would you look at this? It becomes impossible. And it becomes impossible to run a business effectively and show everybody the books. And I felt really bad about that because book haul videos are super fun, and I want to show off fun, rare books when I get them. But I had to give myself permission to just not care about that. And so especially when you consider, like, how many times are you going to touch a book, before you get it on your inventory shelf and ready to be sold. So I apologize for that. The number of amazing books that have come through my hand this year are almost incalculable. And hopefully I've got some good pictures of some of them that I'll throw up here so that you can see what I mean. But it is shocking. It is shocking what I have come across this year. On top of that, not long after my trip to deliver bookcases, I ended up getting a hold of another personal collection out of New York, which involved a trip up there. And these trips are to go and buy books are extremely fun. And even on my trip to Minnesota, I spent a lot of that time buying books and looking for books, and generally just had a great time doing it. And it's something that I wish on some level I could share, but I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. The third big collection that I purchased this year was from the poet J.D. Sandy McClatchy. And it's really interesting. This one, there's a little bit more video here that I can show you from it, but it was a large collection. McClatchy was the editor of the Yale Review for many years. He was also the editor for James Merrill, and wrote many reviews on modern American poets, and he was an opera librettist, generally pretty awesome dude. He's also married to Chip Kidd, who works for Knopf and is a renowned cover artist. And so when his collection came up for sale, I was really just amazed that it was being sold as it was. And I didn't hold out a lot of hope that I would actually get it, but I did. And for an exceptional price. And when I got the collection, I kept asking myself, I said, well, how did this happen? You know, how did I get this collection? Because this is just bizarre. And I think that the answer was COVID. I think that JD died just before COVID, and at some point, you know, when somebody dies, a lot of times their library sits for a while people figure out what's going to happen. And it looked as though all of his books were packed in a very haphazard way in huge boxes that were just coming apart at the seams. And then it is my suspicion, because this was written on all of the boxes, that they were taken to the Strand in New York City, and that the intention was to sell them as a collection to the Strand. But due to COVID, the Strand, you know, was no longer buying collections in that way, and so the books were released back to whomever. You know, I assume Chip Kidd. I don't know, Sandy's family, and then they went into storage. And at some point, somebody pulled them out of storage, and they got them to an auction house and said, these books need to go find a home. And so they have found a home here in my inventory, and it has been an absolute pleasure going through these books. Typically, my inventory is very science fiction, fantasy heavy, with a lot of UFO books and a lot of occult books and that sort of thing. But having the American poetry and German literature and that sort of thing kind of enter into the inventory sphere has been a blessing. It's been something that I've wanted for quite a while, and I'm happy that it came through. And I'm sad that I did not share any of that, because books are a joy, and I want to share that joy with the people here that like books. But I have failed that this past year, and I had to give myself permission to fail. I had to give myself permission to just say, hey, focus on what you need to do, and don't worry about the making videos thing right now. It doesn't matter, and you can come back to that later. And so that is what I have done this year. Some of it feels like ADHD paralysis, where I just can't do it. I can't make myself do it. And what's funny is that that paralysis doesn't necessarily exist in other parts of your life at any given time. Like, you can be very hyper focused on a lot of things. I'm the sort of person that does not like to sit still. I don't like to not be doing something. And so I have just stayed very focused on listing books and selling books, and but that paralysis that otherwise keeps you from doing one thing or another has sort of seeped into those other areas. And as sort of a coping mechanism, I've just said, you know what? I just can't. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just not going to worry about it. So, let's look at the list. I had one other really big success this year that again, I should have made a video on, and I didn't. And I regret not making a video about this. I had my first in-person sales experience this year at Pulp Fest, and 99% of that experience was amazing. And I got to meet Pulp Mortem and some other really great guys, and Pulp Mortem is a particularly nice guy. He is a fella that, it's funny, as soon as I met him, I'm like, oh, like, I know you. Like, I know a lot. I mean, you're like a guy, like, I'm like a guy that I've known guys like you. You're like my buddy Mike, whatever. I just, you remind me of the people that I have known. And so he had this very familiar quality, and he was extremely warm, and it was surprising, because while I try myself to be very warm, I'm also necessarily guarded, and I just sort of feel that way sometimes. But it's very much the sort of person that lets you let your guard down. And I wish I had spent some more time hanging out with him while we were there, and I was real busy, and I had a great time selling there. I personally, my personal criticism is that a lot of my pricing was pretty high for an in-person sales experience, but also the quality of the books that I brought was extremely high. So it was one of those mint condition conundrums, and most of the inventory that I brought with me that wasn't sold has basically been sold at this point. So all in all, it was a really good experience. I had one hiccup there, and it actually made for a fairly funny story, and I'll tell it here. I've told it to my customers on Whatnot a couple of times, and it's pretty funny, if not embarrassing. But one of the things that I brought with me to Pulp Fest were several of the DAW book spinners that I had made, and I even made an additional one. I made a Dell one for Pulp Fest, and we had the British asshole in the comment of one of the DAW spinner videos where he wagged his finger at me about using the wrong terminology, and wanted to impress upon me that he was a legitimate bookseller, and as such, he knows what to call these book spinners. But either way, they were a real hit, and I had a lot of people coming up to me and asking me about them, and wanting to buy them. And it's such a conundrum when you build something for yourself, and you build something because you want to build it, and you make a thing because it's in your head and you have to make the thing, and then somebody comes along and says, well, how much would you sell it to me for? Well, $1 million fucking dollars. I don't know. Like, I made it not for you, I made it for me. And I was not explicitly trying to sell these book spinners. And but either way, under any circumstance, whatever my intentions were, I had a lot of people, other booksellers, and what, coming up to me constantly. What would you build that for? What would you sell that for? What would you do that for? And some of them were even shocked when I had to explain to them that it was, that I made them out of wood, that these are wooden things. One guy was just like, oh, you just print that out on your 3D printer. And it's like, no, homie, these were not 3D printed. These are actual wooden bookshelves. But the funny thing was that after all of these days of people coming up to me and saying, you know, I want to buy one, what would you sell one to me for? I decided to put one in the Pulp Fest auction, which there's an auction every time, and it was a last minute decision, you know, and so I had the really tall spinner, and I had a shorter one that was about half the size of the tall one, and I decided, you know, I'm going to put it in this auction. The auction was like the last night, and it, you know, it went on to like 2 a.m. My book spinner was the last of the lots, right? It was like the last thing in there. And these guys wanted to get the fuck out of there. And, you know, the guy that was actually running the auction, you could just tell that, like, he gave no fucks at this point. And I can't blame him. It was 2 a.m. But he just sort of, like, ran through the description of it and then was just like, you know, and I had a reserve price on it, which maybe I shouldn't have put a reserve price on it. But I didn't really want to sell it. And so I'd asked for $800 as a reserve, which I thought, if somebody's willing to pay me $800 as a reserve, that's great. They can have it. Fantastic. And so, you know, it's almost 2 a.m. The guy, you know, he gets it. There's some bullshit this fucking guy made, whatever, 800. Anybody want it for $800? All right, fuck you, you know. And then it was over and it was gone.
This is a beautiful DAW spinner built by Brandon. There is a reserve.
And the DAW spinner rate, holy man, don't give me $100 on that. I need 200, I need 300, I need 400, I need 500, I need 600, I need 700, I need $800 reserve for the DAW spinner. It doesn't come with books.
And I'm like, cool, that's great. Like, no harm, no foul. My feelings were not hurt. I was just like, thank God I can go to bed now, you know. And but I couldn't go to bed because I had won some things in the auction, and I had to go to the auction room, and I had to pay Mike, who was the guy who organizes Pulp Fest, and you know, paying Mike and this other bookseller, this little bald fucker from some fucking where in the Midwest, rolls up into the room. I'm the only other guy in there. I'm in there, I'm talking to Mike, I'm paying for my shit, he's getting my pile together, and this little fucker walks in the room and he goes, Can you believe it? Can you believe that guy wanted $800 fucking dollars for that thing? That's fucking ridiculous. And Mike's looking at him like, dude, he's standing right here. Like, the guy's right, he's standing right here. And then he turns around and he looks at me and he's like, oh, well, you know that you're never gonna get that kind of money for woodwork. No one's ever gonna pay you money for the things that you build. That's just not the way it works. People just can buy things on Amazon, and I'm just looking at the guy like, all right, dude, like, I hear you. Like, it's fine. I'm not upset. Like, none of this is upsetting to me except for, like, what's happening right now. This is a little upsetting. And he's just going on and on. And then, like, I was, you know, like, I just sort of was just like, whatever, dude. And I got my stuff. I had this huge pile of stuff that I had just bought. And I go to the elevator and I've got to take it up to my room. And, you know, my wife is asleep in the room and all this stuff. Trying not to wake her up. And I have to ride on the elevator up with this motherfucker. And he's just like, you know, it's nothing personal. It's just that people aren't, you know, you can put whatever price you want on a thing. People aren't going to pay you for that. People aren't going to buy that from you. And I'm just still listening to it in the fucking elevator. And I'm like, all right, man. All right. It's cool. And so I drop my stuff off in the room and I have to go back downstairs to get the spinner, you know, because I gotta get it out of that room and get it back up into my room. And I go back down there, and I walk in the room, and Mike is telling the story of what just happened to somebody else. And then he's standing there, and he's like, and then I tell him, the guy's standing right here. The guy's standing. And there I was, standing there again, just like, fuck, like, obliterate me with embarrassment, please, you know? And I don't fully understand, like, what bothered them so much about it, you know, because this was an original thing that I had made. I didn't want to sell them in the first place. I really didn't. I did not bring them to sell them. I brought them as displays for books, and they were so just out of fucking whack because, you know, like, I had the audacity to put a reserve on a thing that I had built. And so it's such a small, insignificant thing that it doesn't warrant me having some negative feeling about Pulp Fest in general. I'll probably be back next year to sell again. But it was just really surprising. It was a surprising thing, and it was hilarious. Like, the hilarity of it was not lost on me at all. But at the same time, I'm just like, guys, it's just calm the fuck down. Just calm down. It's fine. It's fine. The British Bookman, calm the fuck down. I said the wrong thing. I called it a book spinner thing. Whatever. Like, I used the wrong name. Everybody calm the fuck down. I made a thing. But it's just fucking hilarious to me how bent out of shape people can get about something like that, where I just built a thing in my garage. That's all I did. And no, I don't know what to sell it for. And the story ends very happily for one of my Whatnot customers, because in November I decided I was tired of having the little one in the house anymore, because I just ran out of space. The more things I build, the more space it takes up. And so I sold it way less than $800 to one of my awesome customers. And because I knew that he would appreciate it, and I was ready to sell it at that point. I was ready for it to move on. And you know, that is a funny thing about pricing, especially works of art or, you know, personal builds or whatever, that sometimes people don't understand. It's that, you know, sometimes the price is not there because I expect you to pay it. Sometimes the price is there because I don't want to sell it. And that is the amount of money that I would take if I were to sell this thing, unless like an emotional change occurs and I decide otherwise, which is what happened with one of the DAW spinners. So I don't know. It's a fun story. I think it's hilarious. I get a good laugh about it every time I think about it. So that, yeah. But really great people. Pulp Mortem is a fantastic guy. There were a number of other YouTubers there from sort of his little ecosystem of YouTubers, and they're all just spectacular guys. And again, I wish I could have spent some more time with them. Maybe next year. Maybe next year is how that happens. So I don't know. Part of one of the things for 2026 that I'm looking forward to is my new website. And I am going to have a new direct sales website for rare books and otherwise. And you will be able to buy directly from me. I'll still be on eBay. I'll still be on Whatnot. But I'm very excited about having a cleaner, more direct way to sell books to people. And that comes with, you know, the necessary certifications to say, hey, you know, I'm a legit bookseller. and so that there's no, mincing words about whether or not you could trust me as a bookseller. And that's something that I want to kind of... I'm going to get a little negative here for just a second, if you can bear with me, because I want to talk about that. It's very important to me, having trust in a bookseller. And I know that people are allowed to spend whatever they want on a book. And some books, especially depending on quality, have a very wide range in pricing. There is a really great bookseller that I know named Chris McMillan, and Chris is very fond of saying, a book, a book that's in good condition or reader's condition, the price on some, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the price on something like that is very low, very standard. But for mint condition books, sky is the limit, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that as a seller and a collector, if I have a very, very high quality book, I'm not necessarily motivated to sell that book quickly. One, because I like to have it in my inventory and in my collection because it is such a high quality example of something. But two, high quality examples of rare books will fetch whatever price somebody will pay for them. Now, what we see within the ecosystem of booksellers now is that there are certain booksellers out there who have very large audiences, and whether that's a commercial audience or however that goes, but they are unscrupulous in the ways in which they sell their books. And so that means, doing live shows and whatnot without photographs of the books that you're pre-bidding on, and then being presented with a book that is in absolutely horrific condition, and then watching that book get sold for a price that is unreasonable. And I think that a lot of that is due to the way that book buyers have been trained by unscrupulous entities like thrift books and that sort of thing. That Library Ladder did a great job sort of explaining that ecosystem and that landscape. But there are certain actors that are beyond the pale with it. And they're actors, they're people who have been told privately, hey, what you're doing is not... it's not an acceptable way to represent yourself as a bookseller in this space. And it's hard because people want to help and they want to give money to people, especially people who are obviously suffering from life events or mental illness or whatever the fact. You develop parasocial relationship with somebody, and you feel like, they deserve to have this much money for a book. But what's really happening is that the unscrupulous nature of the seller is not acting as a filter on his end. He's not saying, this is a book in a condition that is unacceptable for sale. They just see it as, somebody's going to pay me $40 for this piece of shit. And I think that there's a certain level of encouragement that people need to hear from other booksellers that say, look, you spend what you want on certain books. Yes, certain books are very expensive, but expensive books should also match in quality. And that one of the oldest traditions amongst booksellers is to reward a high quality book with a high quality book price, but not the other way around. a free book is a free book. A dollar book is a dollar book. And, there are special circumstances where you say, well, I've been looking for this book forever, and I don't care if it's a piece of shit. I pay what I want for it. And that's fine, but you don't have to. And you need to know that anyone who is trying to sell you a broken book, without a photographed preview or a description of its brokenness, is being unscrupulous and should not be rewarded for that. Now, these are very controversial statements, but they shouldn't be. This should just be good practice. And I would point that finger at Amazon or Thrift Books or World of Books USA, or any number of other grifty booksellers out there in the ecosystem, that what you're doing is wrong, and it's not a good business practice, even if it nets you seemingly higher profits in the short term. It's just not a good look. It's not ethical. And there are very few things with book selling that I feel could be construed as unethical, but that is one of them. Book selling is one of the oldest traditions on the planet. I mean, ever since we were making cuneiform tablets, there were people collecting them and sharing them and selling them. And the keepers of scrolls, the librarians of the ancient past, they were all trying to perform something that was by and large not only ethical, but really fundamentally good for humanity. And there's so many things within humanity that we poison with exchange and business, and the capitalization of things. And I'm not here to get on a preachy fit about capitalism necessarily, but there are certain things that it's hard to pervert them. And book selling is one of those things. It is difficult to pervert book selling with money, because books are a thing that people want, and books are necessarily rare. The fact that people have found a way in our current paradigm to take something that is generally very wholesome and very good for humanity and turn it into something that is icky. It makes me very sad, because we have enough things in our world right now that are icky as fuck, that book selling doesn't have to be one of them. It just doesn't have to be. That's my 2 cents on that. I think I should probably finally talk about reading. And, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, because what I have to say is not great. So, I spent the better part of this year trying to read The Sheep Look Up, because it is the sequel to Stand on Zanzibar. And if you haven't seen my thoughts and feelings on Stand on Zanzibar, I'd encourage you to go watch that video. I'd encourage you to go read the book, for all the reasons that I mentioned in the video. But I will tell you that I have completely and utterly failed to read The Sheep Look Up this year, because it is like a fucking horror show of our present moment. Even more so than Zanzibar. There were so many parallels with reality in Zanzibar that it was deeply unsettling. But it's even more so the case with The Sheep Look Up. And frankly, it was demoralizing, and I would get through little chunks at a time and then just put it down as if it were fucking radioactive. So that's how I feel about that. As a way to sort of make up for that, I read a lot of short fiction by Bruner this year. And, you know, like a moron, I can't remember half the titles because that's how my brain works now. But I read this one really great one that was it was about overpopulation, and it was about the. It's funny because I had conceived of a notion of this story as a teenager, but never knew how to write it. And then when I found that Bruner had already written it, I was very satisfied because he did it correctly. But it explores the notion of if there are a limited number of souls available for incarnation, what happens when we reach a peak population point where we have exhausted the number of available souls for incarnation. And I wish that I could remember the name of the story. Maybe I'll put it down on the bottom, but I probably won't. Otherwise, I encourage you to just go out there and find it. It's one of Bruner's short stories, and it's the one that really stands out to me out of maybe the 10 or 15 that I read this year. The other thing that I read a lot of this past year was a lot of Stanislav Lem. And again, like, when I think of his works, I am fond of them, but they sit in my stomach the way that the memory of a fever sits with you. Sorry, I had to go back and look at my list here. Specifically, Memoirs Found in a Bathtub. This is a book about paranoia, and I read it at the beginning of the year when we were really descending into this madness of our moment, and it has sat in my gut in a sour way all year. I don't say that to discourage you from reading it, because I do think that it is an extremely powerful example of the paranoia that we are all arming ourselves with as a society. And in the book, it takes place in a literal compound, in a microcosm, but it's, you know, allegorical to everything. The way in which we question and rewrite the rules of our own reality. It was rough. It was a really hard read. But I did it. I also finally read Ubik this year, which I had never read before. I think it was the first thing that I read this year. And it's funny, just like everything with Dick, I have a fond memory of it in my head. It's something that, you know, I think back to reading it and I think, yeah, that was great. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. But that, I'm not left with much else. And that is going to seem harsh and overly critical to Dick, but it is the way that every Dick book and Dick story has affected me. It's just, you get a little Dick in and then that's it. I always try to reread a Vonnegut book each year, and at the beginning of this year I reread Did I Dick? And in fact I made my son read it. It was his first Vonnegut book, and it's a weird first one to throw at somebody, and I recognize that, but I spent a lot of time earlier this year thinking about gun feelings, about what are my feelings about guns. And I grew up in a household with guns, and I grew up learning how to use a gun properly. And as a father, I don't maintain that kind of household now. We're not a gun household. I don't train my kids to use guns. But I train my kids to read books. And this was a book with a powerful lesson in it, both about the unforgiving nature of society and opinion, but also the way in which a simple mistake can completely upend your entire life. And Vonnegut is great at building those moments that you can look back on over the arc of a life and say, that right there, that moment right there is where it all changed. And something really powerful about that lesson as we look at our current reality. And it felt like the right Vonnegut book to read this year. And maybe I'll have some more thoughts on that at some point. Honestly, it's one of the videos that I recorded earlier this year and then realized that I had no viable audio after the fact. But I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna let that go. The other book that I started in DNF'd, I fully intend to finish it, but it just didn't happen this year, was The Left Hand of Darkness. And I knew too much about this book going into it. I knew a lot about it before I started reading it, and a lot about Le Guin's intentions when she wrote it. But the practical nature of Le Guin's writing is difficult to accept sometimes. And that is really my only criticism of her. Her intentions are clear to me, and I commend her abilities, because I think that she is a very able writer, and I'm in no position to really critique her as a writer. But from a reader's perspective, there's certain times when you just want to say, get to the fucking point. And that's an impatience that is inherent in our current moment, I think. And that says more about me than it says about Le Guin. But there was definitely a certain point that I got to in Left Hand where I just wanted her to get to the fucking point. And I think a lot of it, again, is a result of sort of being held up to the mirror of the moment. And there's a certain desire for all of us to know, what the fuck is about to happen to us? Are we going to end up in network state hellscapes? Are the rich people just finally fucking done with us? They're just looting everything before they get rid of us all. I mean, I don't know. But the feeling that you're left with is, get to the fucking point. Get to the fucking point. What are we doing here? And so maybe my impatience with the world at large was reflected there in my reading of Le Guin. And I think it speaks a lot to how difficult it has been to read things this year. And towards the latter half of this year, I really leaned into this idea that even as a person who doesn't read fantasy, that's really what I want. That I really wanted escapism. And I went down a pretty deep Clark Ashton Smith hole this past fall, and I don't know if it was the fantasy that I wanted, but it may have been the fantasy that I needed. If cosmic horror counts as fantasy, I don't know. Those are not very great book thoughts, and I feel like I have spared you a lot of negative book thoughts this year, and all I can do is apologize and point at my humanity and say, you know, it's just a fucking dude, like, because that really is like one of the issues that I have. Just saying my words at the camera is that there are enough white guys talking words at cameras right now, and maybe another one is not what we need. And maybe if I just stay quiet and sit in my corner, and you know, the storm will pass and things will get unweird again. But I don't think that they're going to get unweird. And the thing that has been impressed upon me and that I have found over and over again in my life is that community is where it gets better. And community is where you start to reshape and re-envision what life can be. And even though I'm absolutely horrified at the idea of subscribers, or the idea that more than 10 people might see my video, I am encouraged to give other people just a nod that says, hey, you are thinking and feeling a thing that I am also thinking and feeling, and you are not alone. And I think it is important for us because that is where our humanity lies. And we really have to seize our humanity in this moment and look at each other and say, hey, you're not alone. And what you're seeing and feeling is legitimate, and the things that are happening are fucking crazy, and they don't need to be crazy. It could just be nice. It could just be nice. We could all just do it nice. But I don't know. The French did invent a billionaire filter at some point. It really just, you know, it's just a matter of whether or not, you know, whatever. Thanks for spending your time listening to me ramble. I don't know if this was any good for you, but I needed to do this, and I feel better about myself having checked this box and made this video. And I'm not going to guarantee videos at any regular interval. What I have told myself in the past is when you have something to say, you should feel free to go and say it to the YouTube if you want to. But otherwise, don't feel the pressure. At least I took the pressure off of me last year. So we'll see what happens going forward this year. I do regular Whatnot shows or regular Whatnot shows. So, you know, if you'd like to come and listen to me ramble and sell books, I'm always happy to have you there. You can find me on eBay, and soon I will have a new shiny direct sales website. And that is the end of my commercialism right there. That's all a commercial should ever be. It should never be more. I feel like all commercials should just be somebody in a fucking gray suit that says, "This is our product. We just wanted to let you know that this exists. Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting your time." That's all a commercial should be. So, c'est la vie. Peace, love, and honey toast, everybody.